Good morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Orient Mako XL reference FEM 75004B9. I paid £146 for the watch and I bought the watch from Amazon. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in. The watch box comes in this white cardboard outer protective box, and the watch box itself is made from plastic and it's coated in a matte black vinyl. The lid of the watch box is hinged and the lid itself has a brushed satin finish stainless steel plate which is pop riveted in the four corners. So firstly, I want to give due credit to Orient for producing a good quality watch box, bearing in mind that this is a low price tier piece at only £146. The interior of the watch box is fully lined with a satin finish fabric and the watch itself sits on a padded pillow cushion. So very good presentation, and the quality of the watch box is good at this price point. The watch also comes with this plastic tag with the Orient brand logo in silver. On the reverse of the tag it has the barcode and the reference number of the piece. One also gets an international guarantee booklet. Now, I'm pleased to report that the Orient Mako XL comes with a 2-year international guarantee, and I think that's very good, bearing in mind that it only costs £146. Now, unfortunately, I bought this watch from Amazon and it didn't come with an owner's instruction manual booklet. Normally when one buys an Orient watch from Amazon, one gets 2 booklets. This international guarantee booklet, which is translated into multiple foreign languages, and one also gets an owner's instruction manual booklet, which is also translated. And it's a shame because if you're unfamiliar with Orient automatic watches, you're just going to have to figure out how to use it yourself. I always think it's nice to get an owner's instruction manual with a watch, so if you're unfamiliar with the movements or the watch, you can read through the owner's instruction manual to familiarise yourself with the operation of the movement. So with regards to the specifications of this Orient Mako XL, it's a 45mm case. It has a lug-to-lug measurement of 52mm. The lug width is 22mm and the thickness of the watch is 13mm. So it's a large piece, and that's immediately apparent. When you take the watch out of the watch box, you can feel the weight, you can feel the heft in your hand. This is an incredibly heavy watch. It's 195 grams on the oyster style bracelet, including all the links. Really, for a dive watch, I think 150 to 160 grams should be the maximum for comfort if you're wearing the watch for long periods of time. For example, if you're intending to wear a watch as a daily wear piece for 8, 10 or 12 hours, 150 to 160 grams is comfortable heft to wear for long periods of time. 195 grams, which is the weight of this watch, is far too heavy. It's a 45mm watch with a 52mm lug-to-lug measurement, so yes, one is going to expect it to have heft, but really 195 grams is excessive heft. This watch is just too big and too heavy to be worn for long periods of time. And I say that as a collector with a larger wrist. I have an 8-inch wrist, and normally I would say that I like large dive watches. I like 45mm watches such as the Omega Planet Ocean, which is this is clearly an homage to. Now, with regards to that aspect, the fact that this is an homage to the Planet Ocean, one can clearly see the similarities. It has the same orange aluminium bezel insert with a silver centre and the same font, the black numerals for the minutes on the aluminium bezel insert. They're very similar to the Omega Planet Ocean font used. Now, it's clear that Orient has tried to make this watch look like an Omega Planet Ocean. The Omega Planet Ocean has a 10 o'clock position helium escape valve on the left-hand flank of the case. And what Orient has done to try and replicate that 10 o'clock helium escape valve is they've put a 2 o'clock pusher on the right-hand flank of the case. So it's clearly meant to look like a helium escape valve that one gets on the 10 o'clock position on the Planet Ocean. I think that was a big mistake. It looks ugly and it doesn't serve any meaningful purpose because that pusher simply advances the day complication. When I press it, if you look at the day-date complication, you can see that the pusher clicks on the day complication by 1 day per click. So yes, it does work well in terms of execution, but really there was no need for it. because what Orient could have done with this automatic movement is use the more conventional setup of having 2 click positions, a position 1 and position 2 on the crown winding stem. So you unscrew the crown and you pull it out to the first or second click to set either the day or date complication respectively. There really is no need to have a pusher to separately operate the day complication to click to advance the day wheel. So it's just there for show. It's simply there for aesthetic purposes rather than functional purposes. Now there is a negative to it as well. I'm just going to advance it to Friday and then you'll fully understand what the negative is. Right, so I've now clicked the day wheel round to Friday, FRI for Friday. What Orient has done is they've put this central bar, this division between the day and day complication. If you look at the date window, you see that black plastic bar which divides the day-date complication. It's now on Friday, so the letters are FRI, and the problem is the I letter in FRI is partially obscured by the shadow that divisive bar creates. If you tilt the watch at an oblique angle, you'll see there's a shadow on both the day and date window, and that means it's actually hard to read, because although it's a white day wheel and a white date wheel respectively with black numerals and black letters, normally that improves legibility. If you have a matte black dial, for example, if you have the Seiko SKX 007, that has a white day-date complication. It's easy to read because the white contrasts very well with a matte black dial. But what Orient has done is they've ruined the execution, the legibility, the functionality of that day-date complication by putting this thick black bar dividing the day wheel and the date wheel. And it just creates a shadow all around. And bear in mind that this is a flat mineral crystal. There's no Cyclops magnifier to make the day-date complication more legible. So big mistake. I dislike the pusher at 2 o'clock, and I also dislike that central bar in the date window. So what are the other negatives to this watch? Well, looking at the aluminium bezel inserts, it's clearly a copy of the Omega Planetocean bezel inserts with that orange metallic finish and black numerals. The 60-minute mark, there's no Lume pip, there's no triangle at the 60-minute mark. And the problem is, if I tilt the watch in the light, if you look at the 60 numerals now, when I tilt it in the light, you see the way the light reflects off it like a mirror. It's actually hard to read. The problem is when you rotate the bezel around to that 60-minute mark, normally you would look for a Lume pip or you would look for a triangle on the aluminium bezel inserts, and that makes it easy to align the 60-minute mark on the bezel with the 12 o'clock index on the dial. But as you can see, because it's got 60 numerals rather than having a Lume pip or a triangle, when the light reflects off it like that, it's actually hard to read the black 60-minute numerals on the orange metallic aluminium bezel insert like that. It's like a mirror. So it's not functional. Yes, it's aesthetically pleasing because it is an homage to the Omega Planetocean. The metallic orange is very nice. The black numerals do contrast very well with it. But it's just impractical. This is clearly meant to be a dive style watch, so it should have a triangle and a Lume pip on the aluminium bezel insert. So that's a major negative. It's not functional and it's not aesthetically pleasing to have 60 rather than a Lume pip and triangle at 12 o'clock. So with regards to the other negatives of the watch, it uses a flat mineral crystal. Now there's no AR coating on it. The problem with that flat mineral crystal is if I tilt the watch in the light, it's under a bright LED table lamp, you can see it's highly reflective, and that actually means that it has poor legibility. It's actually quite hard to read the applied indices and the hands. Yes, the arrow hands, they're clearly a copy of the Omega Planetocean hands. It's an homage to that watch, that's fair enough. But the problem is, normally those applied indices and also those arrow hands would contrast well with a matte black dial, but because it's got that flat mineral crystal without any AR coating, what actually happens is the light bounces off, it reflects off the top side of that crystal. There's no AR coating on the underside, and also it has a brushed satin finish rehort, and the problem is the light further bounces around the dial, so you end up getting a very poorly, a very hard to read dial. The legibility is poor. As you can see, the light is reflecting off that flat mineral crystal. It actually makes it hard to read. So it's not aesthetically pleasing, and the problem is it's not functional either. The aluminium bezel insert is too reflective. The flat mineral crystal without AR coating is also too reflective. It's not clearly legible. And that really compounds the problem of not having a Cyclops magnifier and that central bar in the day-date window, as I've discussed. It really creates a shadow around the day-date wheels, and it's just a very bad design. So with regards to the watch, 52mm really is too long. This watch is like a rectangular slab of stainless steel on the wrist. Really, I think for any watch case size, regardless of whether it's a 40, a 42 or even a 45mm case like this one, 48 to 50mm is the perfect lug-to-lug measurement. 50mm is the optimum. It's the perfect lug-to-lug measurement, regardless of whether you're a collector with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, a smaller wrist, or a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches respectively. 50mm will suit both cases, but 52 is a very long case. So the problem with that is it adds heft to the case because it's 2mm longer, but also it means that the watch doesn't sit well on the wrist. It's too long. It's like a long rectangular slab of stainless steel rather than being a shorter curved slab of stainless steel wrapping around the wrist. So I dislike the 52mm lug-to-lug measurement. It's 2mm too long. The 45mm case is well executed in terms of its case finishing. The mirror polished flanks of the case and the chamfers to the edge of the case, which mark the transition between the brushed satin finish on the tops of the lugs and the mirror polished flanks, that chamfer is very well polished. The execution of the finishing of the case is very good. I like the pointed crown guards, but the problem is with the 45mm case and large pointed crown guards, the screw-down crown, which has a coin edge finish to it, is too small. The crown simply looks too small for a 45mm case. It looks undersized, and the problem is with those large pointed crown guards, it's actually hard to grip and unscrew. So the execution of the crown is poor. It's actually hard to get a grip of it between one's index finger and thumb to unscrew and set the time. So I dislike the undersized crown. Now, the crown is unsigned, and that's another negative because normally on Orient watches, such as the Kamasu, the Kano, and the standard Orient Mako, the crown is signed. It's laser engraved with the Orient brand logo. But on this Orient Mako XL, it's clearly a cost-cutting measure that there's no laser engraving on the crown. It's unsigned. So I dislike that cost-cutting measure. The other cost-cutting measures are the use of mineral crystal. Again, it's not as good as mineral crystal with an AR coating. It's not as scratch resistant as Hardlex used by Seiko, and bear in mind that Orient could do that because Seiko Epson is the parent company of both Seiko and Orient. So for example, they could use the same Hardlex crystal that is used in Seiko 5s in this Orient Mako XL. They're made by the same factory, Seiko Epson. So negative that it doesn't have sapphire crystal or Hardlex. Mineral crystal really is prone to being scuffed and scratched. The other negatives to the watch, well, it uses hollow folded end links, as you can see. Really, I think in 2020 there's no excuse for using the cost-cutting measure of hollow folded end links. I think watch bracelets at this stage should always use solid stainless steel end links. They're far better quality. The clasp on the bracelet is a 2-button push flip-lock clasp which is engraved with the Orient brand logo. The quality of the finishing is acceptable. The execution in terms of the operation of the 2-button flip-lock clasp is acceptable. However, the interior is very disappointing. It's highly polished stainless steel, but it's a pressed metal clasp rather than being a solid stainless steel milled clasp. Really, I think at this stage all watch brands should be using milled solid stainless steel clasps rather than these abhorrent, cheap quality pressed metal clasps and also these hollow folded end links. The bracelet itself is finished to a good standard. The brushed satin finish on the top side of the bracelet links and also the underside of the bracelet links are brushed into a very good grained finish. The flanks of the bracelet are mirror polished to a flawless mirror finish, and they are very well done. It uses push pins rather than screw pins, as one would expect at this price point. So, what are the other negatives to the watch? Well, I've discussed the weight of the watch. It is 195 grams, and I really think the heft of the watch is the largest negative. The pusher on the case at 2 o'clock is another negative. I really think that is a disappointment. It was a mistake using that. Now with regards to the crown action, the bezel action, it's very good. It's got a good firm solid resistance, and I like the loud heavy clicks. It feels like a Seiko SKX 007 or alternatively a Steinhardt Ocean 1, so minimal backlash and a good firm action. So I do like that on a 120 click unidirectional bezel to have solid firm resistance. The only problem, as I've discussed, is aligning the 60-minute mark with the 12 o'clock index due to the highly reflective properties of aluminium. So I'll talk about the movement used in this watch. Now, it uses an in-house produced Epson-made caliber 46943. So it has a screw-down solid stainless steel case back, which is very well finished. The edges of the case back are mirror polished to a flawless finish. The centre has concentric brushed satin finish, which is very aesthetically pleasing. The case back is engraved with an Orient brand logo, and it's very well done. But the problem is that thick solid stainless steel case back going onto a 45mm case does add significant heft to the watch. At 195 grams, it's a very heavy watch, as I've discussed. So with regards to that movement, the Epson made caliber 46943. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It runs at a frequency of 3 Hz, a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has 21 joules. Now the negative of it is that it doesn't have hand winding and hacking, and that's a real shame because this has a 40-hour power reserve, as one would expect, which is perfectly acceptable. The problem is one cannot unscrew the crown and manually wind it to top up that 40-hour power reserve. So if you wear this watch in rotation, that's going to be a problem, because you cannot manually wind it. If you don't wear the watch daily for 8 hours a day, it's not going to keep the 40-hour power reserve topped up. You also cannot unscrew the crown and hack the movement. You can't stop the second hand dead to hack it. So it's a problem if you like to set the time precisely to the second, because the movement doesn't hack. I think the lack of hand winding and hacking really is a disappointment. It's £146. For that money, one could buy a Seiko 5 with a 4R36. The Seiko 5KX is a credible alternative to this watch, and that does have hand winding and hacking. I regard the Seiko 4R36 to be a better movement than this Epson caliber 46943 used in this watch. With regards to accuracy, the caliber 46943 in this watch has a stated accuracy of plus 25 seconds to minus 15 seconds per day. This one is currently running at plus 15 seconds per day. Yes, that's within those limits, but I think plus 15 seconds per day is unacceptable. It should be possible to regulate an automatic movement to within plus or minus 10 seconds per day quite easily, and that's just regulating the movement in 2 positions. That's not regulating it in 5 positions to cost chronometer limits, for example. So I really think it's a disappointment. For example, the 4R36 used in the Seiko 5KX, that typically has a better accuracy. That will typically arrive from Seiko with an accuracy of plus or minus 10 seconds per day or even better. So this one at plus 15 seconds per day is disappointing, and I really dislike that lack of hand winding and hacking. So yes, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. The durability is good, the reliability is good, but the problem is the accuracy is nothing special, and also one cannot hand wind and hack it. So overall I think the movement is okay, but it's nothing special, and I really think it's a disappointment. I would like to see a better grade of movement with hand winding and hacking. So overall, what do I think of the watch? Well, I'll give you a Lume shot, but first of all I will give you a wrist shot, and then I will finally surmise the watch after I do the Lume shot. So I'm pleased to report that I have a large 8-inch wrist, as you'll know from my previous reviews, and this bracelet, which is unsized, does indeed fit my 8-inch wrist with no problems whatsoever. So it's a 52mm lug-to-lug measurement, and even on my 8-inch wrist it's slightly too long. I think it's 2mm too long. This does wrap around the wrist due to the curved profile, but it's just too long. It's a long 52mm lug-to-lug. It really does feel like a large, thick slab of stainless steel on the wrist. It doesn't feel comfortable due to that 195 gram heft. 45mm case is no problem on my 8-inch wrist, as you can see, but if you're a collector with a 6 to 7-inch wrist, this is going to be far too large and far too heavy to wear on the wrist. And I would actually say, even for a collector with a 7 to 8-inch wrist like myself, this watch still does feel too large and heavy on the wrist. It's a shame that Orient didn't make the Mako XL in a 42mm case size to reduce the heft from 195 grams down to 150 to 160 grams. If this watch weighed 150 grams and it was 42mm and it had a 50mm lug-to-lug measurement rather than 52, it'd be a far better proportioned piece. It would be more comfortable, it would be less heavy, and overall it would be more aesthetically pleasing. So it's a real shame because Orient could have done a better job of making the XL if it was 42mm. 45 is just too large, it just adds too much heft to the case of the watch. So it's not comfortable because it's a heavy piece and it's just simply too long and too wide. Now I'm just going to take the glove off to get the watch off the wrist. So I'll give you a test of the Lume on the watch, and we'll see how it performs when it's fully charged to the absolute maximum. So just bear with me and I'll turn out the table lamps and then I will charge it up with my 100 LED torch, and we'll see how it performs when it's fully charged. So as you can see, it's already beginning to react, and that's just from the charging of my 4 LED table lamps. But so I'm going to charge it up to the absolute maximum using 100 UV LEDs. Now, with a low tier price point piece such as this is £146. Normally I don't have high expectations of Lume, but however I've often been surprised when reviewing Seiko 5 watches, for example, because the Seiko Lume Bright used on Seiko 5s really is outstanding quality Lume, and it's exceeded my expectations. It's very good quality. So it'll be interesting to see whether this Orient has similar quality Lume to a Seiko 5 which uses Lume Bright. So I'm pleased to report initially the green Lume on this Orient Mako XL does glow very brightly, and I do like the green Lume rather than blue. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, but unfortunately it's immediately beginning to fade and fade fast. I think this Lume is poor quality. It doesn't seem to be holding any charge whatsoever. And bear in mind that I've now charged it to the absolute maximum using 100 LEDs. So one would expect the Lume to be glowing brighter and also holding the charge, emitting a brighter glow than this. So very disappointing. I like the symmetry of those applied indices, and I like the large plots of Lume due to the arrow hand shape, but unfortunately the performance of the Lume is not satisfactory. I would describe it as being poor. So that's a major negative of the watch. I always like to see Lume on dive watches perform well, and the Seiko 5 really is the very best of that. I think if you're considering a low tier price point piece, if you're looking for a dive style watch and you have £150 to spend, then I really think that you cannot beat the Seiko 5. I think that is better quality and better value just on the Lume alone. So overall, what do I think of the watch? Well, I'll surmise it. When I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. The watch should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. Unfortunately, I don't consider this watch to be excellent quality, nor do I consider it to be excellent value at £146, which is the price point. I think the Seiko 5KX is a better watch in terms of the quality of the specification, because the 4R36 has hand winding and hacking, and it is a better option than the Epson Caliber 46943 used in this Mako XL. I really think it's worth having hand winding and hacking. I think they are useful. Now the other thing is, I think the Seiko 5KX case, which is the same as the SKX 007, is a better case shape with the crown at 4 o'clock. It feels more comfortable on the wrist, it's a lighter piece, and therefore it's more comfortable for collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches and also collectors with a wrist of 7 to 8 inches respectively. This watch is simply too large at 45mm and also too heavy at 195 grams. I dislike the pusher at 2 o'clock. That's a mistake, both aesthetically in terms of functionality. The lack of the Lume pip and triangle on the bezel insert is a negative. The bar in the centre of the day-date complication in the date window, another negative. And the lack of AR coating on the underside of the mineral crystal makes it too reflective. So overall, this is a watch with many negatives and very few positives, and for that reason I'm not going to recommend it. It's a real shame, because if Orient had produced this watch in 42mm without a pusher at 2 o'clock, and if they had added a Lume pip and triangle on the bezel insert, yes, it would have been a much better watch. If the movement had hand winding and hacking, it would have been excellent quality and excellent value at £146. Overall, I think this is a disappointing watch. Yes, the case finishing is good, the build quality and the quality control are all good, but unfortunately the specification and the overall execution of the watch is disappointing. It's too big, it's too heavy, and the specification is not satisfactory. So I hope you've liked my review of this Orient Mako XL. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.